At Coffee and Conversation a couple weeks ago, talking about how I felt like I was at a period of time where there were cracks in my foundation, and that I felt like I couldn't get my footing. And I may have even likened that to a core belief system, which should have been my first flag right there, that I was automatically attaching to my BS, right? And afterwards, Paula came up to me because I was just standing there, and she said, "It looks like you're standing pretty firm to me." Yep. So I took that into meditation and decided to peer into the cracks. And guess what I found? Hope. And if you may have been here for Advent season of 2022 or seen it online, I talked about hope. And as those in the health profession like to do, created an acronym. It's a thing. Healing oneness for people everywhere. Oneness, hope in that moment. And in seeing that, I realized these were not cracks in the foundation, because the foundation is source and is love, and there is nothing that can harm that. But that this was merely the shedding of another layer of thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and behavior patterns that were no longer serving the higher good. And by letting these things go, we unburden ourselves of extra weight, which allows us to spread our wings and get one step closer to taking flight as our authentic, true, divine selves. And that reminded me of a poem by Emily Dickinson called "Hope is a Thing with Feathers." Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. And we'll take this into a time of prayer. Holy Heart of the universe, may we enter this time and space with open hearts and open minds. May the grace of our oneness lift us all so that we may soar with peace and ease. And so it is.
here's this card I want to share with you. It doesn't have a name on it, just says your soul sister. So, could be anybody in here, really. Why Spiritual Soul Center? Have you been here? And felt the love? Huh? What have you discovered here, or what are you hoping to find? Like-minded fellowship where unconditional love to all is our goal. How does it feel, or how are you hoping it will feel? Where love permeates the adventure of life as a whole, the joys and the challenges. How will you enrich this space and our community? By being present and giving many hugs. Thank you for that. I want to, yes, I have a chart again, but I want you to, two things that have already happened. Megan has talked about foundation, right? Oh, darn, I'm running out of ink. Foundation. And Raj talked about on a clear day, right? On a clear day. And I'm saying, you can't make this stuff up that happens in the universe, all right? You can't make it up like we didn't call each other and let each other know what we were talking about and how it all fits together. But I think these two things fit with my message today, so I'm just bringing your attention to that. I didn't intend to do this little mini-series about pain, but a couple weeks ago I talked about pain being a sanctuary. That when we're in pain, that we need to create a space for it, a container for it, and not to try to run away from it. Then unbeknownst to me, last week I talked about pain again, and I talked about the importance of pain in awakening our soul, in awakening our heart. Like, that's what pain is about. And I, like I said, I didn't really intend to do that, but that's what happened. And this whole awakening of a heart thing is all about coming in to contact with the soft tenderness that we are, and to allowing that to connect us with all other beings. And I introduced you to from Pema Chodron's book, When Things Fall Apart, the idea of bodhicitta, that tender spot, and awakening that tender spot, and also the practice of Tonglen, which really is the practice. Oh, thank you. Oh, many options. Thank you, Star. Of Tonglen, instead of breathing in what we want, breathing in peace and breathing out the turmoil, to actually breathe in the pain. And to let our heart, our awakened heart, transform that pain, and to breathe out wellness, to breathe out peace, to breathe out healing. You know, that's what an awakened heart is. An awakened heart then connects us to all other beings, to all others, because we all experience pain. There's not one among us that doesn't have the pain, the grief, the physical pain, the emotional pain, the pain of rejection, the pain of loss, all those things. We're all the same when it comes to that. And this idea of breathing in the pain so that we transform it with our awakened heart is really counter to some of the ways we're taught about breathing in and breathing out. All right, we might have been taught to, breathe in the healing and breathe out all the stuff you don't want. But then that's what we're putting back out in the world. What about this connection that we make when we breathe in? While we're in pain too, when we're in grief, when we're in physical pain, when we are in turmoil, to breathe that in, to let it bring tears to my eyes, to let it be transformed by me, and to breathe out wellness, and to feel what it feels like to heal that way. It's a tremendous, tremendous power. And it feels really good. And then I was thinking, was that it? Because that's the way my mind works during the week. It's like, well, is that all there is? Is that enough? Is that enough with pain? And I thought, no, I don't think so. Because I think there's another side of softness. I think when you think about, I'm going to be soft, like there's a possibility to be manipulated. When we are so soft and, this way, then we allow ourselves to be taken advantage of. Or maybe we put ourselves out as a doormat because we are open and receptive and we're this wonderful awakened heart. And I'm thinking, you know what? There's another side. There's another side to this. It's not just all about softness. It's not about that. It's another side, because an awakened heart is more than singular in its attributes. It has more than one attribute, meaning softness and tenderness. I believe so. And I believe that other attribute is fierceness. It's fierce. You think about it. You think about the fierceness of a mama mountain lion and her cubs. Is there anything that would stop her from protecting those babies? I mean nothing. I mean nothing. I'm talking about that kind of thing, that fierceness. Because that awakened heart, where we access the love that will not die in us, is not this soft, smarmy place. It is an awakened tenderness that is infused with ferocity. Doesn't that sound amazing? I was like, yeah, that's what I want it to be. That's what I want it to be. Fierce, meaning a wild, turbulent force. Intense and strong. It seems like it's a paradox at first, doesn't it? Like, how can you be soft and fierce? How can that be? Well, I think having this pain and this being in pain, whether it's, like I said, emotional or physical or whatever, it clears out the unimportant things in life. Doesn't it clear things out? It's like when you are experiencing pain, like all the unimportant stuff kind of goes to the wayside. And it really clears that stuff out. And I think what happens in those moments when we create that sanctuary and allow that pain to clear things out, that what rises in our awakened heart is wisdom. It's wisdom. I think and actually, here's where the foundation comes in. I have a graphic for you. Because here's how I think it works. Here's how I think it works. Oh! See, the base, the foundation is an awakened heart, creating that sanctuary. But out of this, I think, comes wisdom, because we let all that other stuff it's no longer important. You know, if your child calls you because they are having an emergency, is there anything that will stand in your way of getting to that child? No, nothing. Not your plans, not your boss, not your job, nothing will stand in the way, right? That wisdom comes up in us, and on wisdom stands this fierceness that I'm saying, determination, resolve, and clarity, because on a clear day. All right? But the foundation is this. The foundation is the softness. The foundation is soft. The wisdom, I'm saying, comes from God. It comes from your natural understanding of what to do or to be. That's already complete in you. And then this fierceness comes out. And it is fierce. And then nothing is ever the same. That's what transformation is. Nothing is ever the same when this happens. From an awakened heart, from that soft spot, from creating a sanctuary from pain comes wisdom. Built on top of that with this big block is that determination, resolve, and clarity that results in transformation. So I'm like that. You see, this is not fueled by rage or hate or revenge or getting even. It's not even fueled by justice in our system, in our what's it called?
Legal system.
In our legal system. Mm-hmm. That's not what fuels transformation. What fuels transformation is none of those things. Wisdom doesn't reside on those things either. Wisdom does not rest on hatred, revenge, or judgment, or any of those things. Clarity, resolve, and determination are based on wisdom, based on an awakened heart. You see how that works? In our world, it's never worked out that way. Wars have been fought. Have they ever? Look at our war on drugs. Are we winning yet? You know, it wasn't based on this. It wasn't based on this. Look at I guess when we toppled the statue before some of you were born in Saddam Hussein, and we thought we're going to get rid of all terrorism. Has that worked? That hasn't worked either. We didn't base it on this. We based it on fear and judgment and hatred and violence, right? We didn't base it on this. This is how nothing is the same, is when we do this. Fierce. I'm saying fierce. Fierce on soft. The paradox of it. The paradox of it. So today, I have a story that I want to share with you. It is the story of exactly this. It's from a book called The Dharma in Difficult Times by Stephen Cope. Anybody have read this book? You might want to, but I love Stephen Cope's work. He also wrote the book that we've done a book study on before called The Great Work of Your Life, and it's based a lot on his writing on the Bhagavad Gita. So I want to tell you the story of Harriet Beecher Stowe. Does anybody know who that is? Yeah? Who does? Who knows something about Harriet Beecher Stowe? What do you know about her?
Was it Underground Railway or Civil Rights?
Maybe. Not really. What do you know about Harriet Beecher Stowe?
Uncle Tom's Cabin.
She wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe.
All right, so you all don't know much about Harriet Beecher Stowe, obviously. Just saying. Which is good, because here I am. I'm basing my lesson on this right here. She was born. She was around in the mid 1800s, and here's a story of who she is. Here's how I want to start off. There was a large crowd gathered in the Boston Music Hall back in 1863, right as the Emancipation Proclamation was being signed by Lincoln. They were waiting for it to be signed, right, in Boston, and they're in this room. And they're waiting, and finally they hear the news that the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. And here she was, the author and abolitionist whose work had turned the tide in the North against slavery. Here she was, a small, middle-aged woman, unprepossessing in appearance. Here she was, rumpled, bonnet askew, tears streaming down her lined face. Most people had never even laid eyes on her. She strode slowly toward the podium. She was quietly self-assured, modest. Upon getting a glimpse of her, the crowd began to chant again, even louder than before. The audience in the music hall that night understood that this slight woman, as much as any single individual in the land, had helped bring freedom to the enslaved South. And she had done it with her pen and her passionate, informed prose. She had recounted the suffering of slavery in such riveting fashion that Northerners almost overnight joined the anti-slavery movement. Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, the cause for her notoriety that evening, had become the best-selling book of the century, only next to the Bible. Dang! You did not know Harriet Beecher Stowe! Neither did I, until I read this book as I did. This is what happened when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. But that was not the beginning of this story. That was the transformation, when nothing would be the same again. But she, when she was married and having children, lived in Cincinnati. And the reality of slavery was right in front of her face on a daily basis. Boats carrying slaves to be sold in the South often laid over in Cincinnati. Harriet observed them closely and was shocked at what she saw. On the upper deck of the boat, she wrote, were happy mothers, wives and husbands, brothers and sisters, rejoicing in secure family affection. And on the deck below, miserable, shattered fragments of black families, wives torn from husbands, children without mothers, and mothers without children. She knew that the slaves on the lower deck were bound for the hell of captivity down the river in the deep south, where they would likely never be heard from again. So this is what she was observing. This is what she was, and it just tore her up. It tore her up. Well, fast forward a little while, she had 6 children with her husband. The sixth child was named Charlie. He was the child that she bonded the most with. He was the perfect baby. She talks and writes about him as if he was the soul of her soul. He was just the apple of her eye, as it were. The favorite child, kind of thing. All right? They had a special bond. But what happened in 1849, there was a cholera outbreak in Cincinnati. And sure enough, this 18-month-old baby contracted cholera. It's an awful disease, one that sucks out all your bodily fluids, and you are just racked in pain. Nothing to be done about it. And she held that 18-month-old baby as he died. And that shook her again. The pain of that. Losing a child feels like the ultimate violation of the rules of life. That's what she said, isn't it? The ultimate violation of the rules of life. So, in the aftermath of Charlie's death, Harriet too began to observe, must have surveyed every grief she saw. Cope writes, "I am sure then in Cincinnati she saw grief and loss all around her, and she began to identify with it and relate to it in a way she never had. She tells us that she would lie awake night after night listening to the wind, thinking of her summer child who died of cholera." So she was in this sanctuary space, right? She had this space of pain. How could Harriet make peace with this loss? She later wrote that there were circumstances of such bitterness in the manner of Charlie's death that she didn't think she could ever be reconciled to it unless the death allowed her to do some great good to others. She also wrote that losing Charlie made her understand what a slave woman felt when her child was taken away from her at the auction block. It had allowed her to empathize with slave women whose children had been violently ripped away from them. She now felt how they felt when they lost a part of themselves. You see how her heart's starting to awaken? That the pain of others is my pain and vice versa. Harriet's heart was ripped open. This allowed her to empathize with others whose hearts had been similarly broken. And she noticed that this gave birth within her an altogether new feeling of compassion, a deep feeling of sympathy for the suffering of others, and indeed, more than a feeling of sympathy, she described it as a feeling of unity with others. This, my friends, is an awakened heart. This is an example of an awakened heart, one that can feel through this pain the unity with others. It's a powerful thing. Where's the next one? If I read this whole book, we'd be here a long time, this whole chapter. So I tried to put it down. Yep. In the previous years, Harriet had not found the time to write, and she was not sure that she had found her subject. But now it was staring her in the face. She would take her compassion for the suffering of the slave mother and the slave father and the family and transform it into a story that would awaken the consciousness and heart of a nation. Wisdom. Who's speaking that? How does she understand that? Why is it coming now? How is it all happening? I'm saying this is the uncovering. This is the flow of wisdom in her. This is the flow of wisdom in her. As a woman about to unload her thoughts on the issue of slavery, though, Harriet was in a unique bind. In the mid-19th century America, women were expected to remain silent on so-called public issues like abolition. Women who spoke out were routinely ostracized from society. But Harriet would not be dissuaded. She would not be dissuaded. She decided that she was willing to suffer the consequences of fully living out her dharma. She was, as she said, willing to sacrifice her womanhood to become a warrior in a righteous cause. She would find her voice, the consequences be damned. Right? My heart, I've made pace for the pain. My heart is broken open. It rose up in me. Now is the time to write. The consequences be damned. This right here. Fierce. Fierce, I'm saying. Fierce. She says, I feel now that the time has come when even a woman or a child who can speak a word for freedom and humanity is bound to speak. The Carthaginian woman in the last peril of their state cut off their hair for bowstrings to give to the defenders of their country. And such peril and shame as now hangs over this country is worse than Roman slavery. And I hope every woman who can write will not be silent. In 1851, Harriet told her brother Henry, who had already become a powerful voice for abolition, that she was doing something too. I have begun a story trying to set forth the sufferings and wrongs of the slave. This was a defining moment for Harriet. It sealed her resolve to fight with everything she had. Yeah? Yeah. A neighbor in Brunswick described Harriet's almost manic behavior during the writing of Uncle Tom's Cabin. As soon as she had swallowed her breakfast, said this neighbor, she would hurry down to the village and write until the dinner bell sounded. And then she would hurry home and eat and right back at it and write until tea time. TEA time. The same neighbor described her utter lack of concern for appearances, with her frizzy hair tossing in an unkempt, disheveled mass upon her neck and shoulders, and her clothes hanging loosely about her form as if they got there by accident. Harriet was a woman possessed. Uncle Tom's Cabin was completed in 1851, and the world would never be the same. The world would never be the same. I mean. There's more. Propelled by Stowe's grief and her prophetic voice, Uncle Tom's Cabin took the world by storm. Realizing the power of Stowe's vivid prose, supporters of slavery rose up everywhere to denounce the book. It was banned across the South. Banned across the South. And even by the fall of 1860, Stowe was burning with indignation and righteous anger, not only at slavery, but also at her very own Christian church, which has stood so idly by and watched the degradations of slavery increase. I mean, she was on a... And this was her foundation. Let's not forget. What started off was her awakened heart. We think it's not powerful enough. We think it's too soft. We think, what's that going to do? I'm telling you, it all started right here. It all started with her observing of having that pain in her and connecting, being willing to listen to the wisdom, to make that be the foundation for her ferocity. And that's what transformed not only her life, but the life of this nation, according to this, the life of a nation. I mean, what's possible from here? To change the life of a nation. Amazing. In her novel, Marianne Evans wrote about loss in this way. She said, it would be a poor result of our own anguish and our own wrestling if we won nothing but our old selves at the end of it. Let us rather be thankful that our sorrow lives in us as an indestructible force. Yeah. There, that. Harriet Beecher Stowe, you won't forget now, and neither will I. Harriet Beecher Stowe, this diminutive woman, transform, nothing being the same from this foundation. I say powerful. So let's take this into meditation this morning just for a little while. I invite you to take a deep breath in and through this story, now that we've heard this story together, to let it inform us. Let us feel the possibility in our own awakened hearts, heart connected through pain to others. A heart enlivened with wisdom from the pulse that lives us, from God, from Holy Spirit, from the divine. To listen to that, to build our ferocity and our determination and our clarity and our resolve on that wisdom sitting on an awakened heart, and knowing without a doubt that the world, indeed that I, will never be the same. Breathing in and breathing out for a few minutes. If we are wise, if we are brave enough, we move toward turbulence and doubt. We jump into it, we slide into it, we tiptoe into it, we move toward it however we can. We explore the reality and the unpredictability of insecurity and pain, and we try not to push it away. If it takes years, if it takes lifetimes, we let it be as it is. At our own pace, without speed or aggression, we move down and down and down. We move millions of others with us, our companions in awakening from fear. And at the bottom, we discover the water, the healing water of bodhicitta. Right down there, in the thick of things, we discover the love that will not die. Amen.
Jelly roll more. This is called the Kansas City Stone.
Keep going. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all be well. May all be peaceful and at ease. May all be happy. Amen. See you next week.